It's the book. Have you got any copies for sale?
There's a few at the back, yeah.
Yes. Right. Could we have the four of you back up here and as Donica's book is there, and I'm sure he'd sign it for you. Right, we have, because we're running a bit late, we'll have 20 minutes question and answers to whichever you want to put your questions there. Right, who wants one, two, anyone else want to ask a question? Three, okay, 1, 2, 3, yeah.
Yeah, two related questions.
One thing, could we keep the questions short?
Yes, yes.
So that way we can
Yes.
get more questions in.
Yeah, two related questions. What should we call the state and how should we fight it? First question, from the talks we heard, it seems the state systematically colludes with organized crime and sometimes organizes the crime itself. So what are we dealing with? Is it a state that organizes crime? What should we call it? I'm not sure this is a new situation. Maybe we just know more about what the state is doing. And then on what to do about it, I think I agree with everything, Donnelly, you said, but many people joining the Green Party now in this surge have been involved in those kinds of political protests for many years, in some cases for several decades, like you. So for some of us, the question arises the other way around, that how do we create a synergy between those political protests, which will continue and will face more and more vicious repression from the state, on the one hand, and the Green Party as perhaps an electoral front or electoral face of those protests.
That's one question that would be for Donica. You're next.
And Donica as well. I think you said it was 80% of the media is corrupt. What should we be advocating within the media? Which the 20%?
And you at the top.
I have a brief question on the Mexican issue, which is, have these crimes been brought to the attention of the various international organisations, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights and the International Court? But back to the issue of corporations, my view is that we are in a, although you allude back to various historical occasions, my view is that we're in completely uncharted territory because we now have, I don't remember the numbers, but a significant proportion of the 100 largest economic entities in the world are now corporations and not countries. And whereas in about 1990 we had around 3,000 multinational corporations, we now have, it was 63 I think in 2008, we now have probably 100. And how does that sit? You know, I mean, the problem isn't just national governments; it's above that.
Okay, Donica, you can start. There's two of them for you.
Okay, I'll take the easy one first. 80% is owned by 5 billionaires. I'm afraid the bad news is that a lot of the rest of the 20% is owned by the 1% as well. So, for example, Lebedev's own the Evening Standard and the Metros, and the Mirror is owned by the top shareholders in the Mirror are actually American banks and investment banks. So basically the only part of the national media, that's national press, that's not owned by the 1% is actually the Guardian. That's the only bit. But obviously the BBC is not owned it, but it's hugely influenced by prosecuted media. It's very hard for a non-1% media to exist within this framework and not be absorbed by it or influenced by it. For example, in the BBC every morning, the producers open the papers and they put the front pages on the paper on their website. So that means that 5 billionaires are actually, to a huge extent, influencing the agenda for the BBC as well. Your question about protests is absolutely right. My personal view is that the time for marches is kind of over. They don't work. They don't get covered. but what does get covered is non-violent direct action. Creative, interesting, peaceful non-violent direct action quite often works. And so that's the challenge for our generation, is to find what that salt is. To find where the establishment doesn't want to tolerate you, but you find, so I don't know what's going to happen during that Occupy Rupert Murdoch week, but I know there's going to be direct, non-violent direct actions, and I believe that that will result in significant energy being generated. If you look at all the Occupy movements across Europe, they were started by people breaking the law peacefully in the centre of town. So there are protests in occupied, the occupied Parliament ones are quite interesting, but we have to find ways to find what the salt is, and I don't think we've found it yet, but they usually stumble on it. We have to pray it happens fast. And the final thing, your question about concentration of power, yes, the concentration of power is enormous, it's staggering, but kind of, you know, if your head gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you fall over, or it explodes. You know, when I kind of started doing Occupy Rupert Murdoch, there was this tape of me kind of passionately speaking outside Parliament when somebody was tied, like the suffragettes, was locked to the gates. And suddenly somebody asked me to give a speech right that moment. And I was going, with all the police and all the stuff happening. And I just give this passionate speech from my heart. And I looked at it in the video and was like, S-H-I-T. I've thrown down the gauntlet to the 5 most powerful men in the country. Oh my God, oh my God. And then I thought, actually, there are only 5 men. There are only 5 people. There's 56 million of us. Are we really saying, are we so disempowered? Are we so weak as individuals that we can allow 5 men with no army to blackmail and dictate our politics? So I'm saying, you know, that kind of puts a different agenda on, and hopefully that helps rebalance. But I do passionately believe you're right. The protest movement's been around for years, the Green Party's been around for years, but maybe if we can find the two together, because the Green Party now has a sort of a momentum and energy about it, so when they do things, the media kind of comes to it. There's a magnet there. You now have that power. How do you want to use it? Yes, of course, sort out your electoral stuff, but that power is valuable. And it's only hugely powerful for the next 12 weeks, until the 5th of May. You have the power. Please, please, please use it.
Yeah. What about I think in Mexico we call the state just the narco state or narco government, because that's what it is, you're right. For us, the state and all political parties are the same. They are criminal gangs, or they are the ones that organize or let these crimes to happen. But I think then for us, it's important also to take into consideration all this context, no? Because Mexico, it has its own history and its own social fights. So personally, that's very personal, I could even question then what is a state? Or is it the state the right political sort of organization that I need? Maybe we just need to consider building something different, no? Starting to consider other options of social, political and economic or types of organizations. That's in my view. But how can we do this if the state is what it is, a prostitute state or just a narco state? I think it has to start from the very basis. It is among us, and how to take how to use this synergy of political and social movements. I think doing it locally, yes, with our local networks, but also transnationally, because what happens in Mexico also resonates here, and it's also somehow linked to what politics it's going on here, you know, how politics are driven in this country. So we are not that far away. We are very linked, and we are closer than we think we are, but we must find how to join our struggles and to support in all of the hemispheres of the world. And in terms of the international organizations, yes, when Ayotzinapa came, when the students were disappeared, actually it was the Green Party at the European Parliament that took the situation of the students, tried to push it to the International Criminal Court, but it was blocked by the Mexican representatives outside. So,
and the PPS,
pardon?
and the parties, and some people in Spain representing the
Yeah,
power.
exactly. So, and the parties that are in other countries. So I think, well, there have been some efforts. The Inter-American Commission of Human Rights, they know about this. However, their role is more not very binding, let's say like that. But I think that it's important to remember that what happens in Mexico, it's a situation of what we're asking is, yes, we want to get rid of this system, but we want also justice. So first we need to achieve justice, and in order to do it, we need to go and try to get some damage reparation. I don't know if that's the right translation in English, for the families and for all these thousands of people that have their children lost and that have their parents or mothers being kidnapped, because this is going to stick in our memories. Latin America already has lots of disappeared people, so we need first to achieve justice, and we cannot do it alone. We need everyone. So that's my answers. I don't know if someone wants to say something else.
Can I just add something
Is
to
that on
that?
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are figures that the Mexican government, as they said, official figures from the Mexican government. Although there's many other figures, produced by NGOs, and I actually have used the figure of 30,000 disappeared individuals in Mexico. Over 130,000 people killed since the last presidency of Calderón, which was the president that started the war on drugs in 2006. In terms of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, the government invited a few specialists on disappearances and human rights abuses to investigate the Ayotzinapa case. But we just saw today a video that pretty much wraps the whole case up, produced by the Mexican government. They want to speed the process up. They want to close this case. They want to bring an end to it, and they want to move on. Just like the president announced yesterday, that although the government needs to resolve this case, we need to move on, and we need to forget what happened and move on. So these specialists were invited. They haven't got to Mexico yet, and they've already given out all the evidence so that they can persecute or bring justice to the families and incarcerate whoever is guilty of the killings. So they haven't even given an opportunity to the specialists, and so I don't know what's happening there. That was something that was raised in the media today. And I think there was something else that I wanted to make a point about. Well, that's basically it, just to add some figures to and some information to Mexican.
3 more questions. It would be nice to have a question for Raul as well. He's getting lonely over that. Yeah, that's 1. 2 more. 2. And another 1. 3. He got in. Okay, we'll take 4. Yeah. Okay, you're first.
Just a little one. When are we going to back on Paris to make a fuss?
Well, we can answer that now. The visit of the president is from the 3rd to the 5th of March. So it's a difficult place to demonstrate, but I don't know, I personally am thinking on a flash mob situation where the photograph is taken within 5 minutes and it's finished, no one saw what happened. That's my plan, but
Good.
I don't know what we're going to do, but we'll let you know.
Yeah, good.
Thanks, all great speeches. Yeah, the question for Raul. You said, you might have covered this, sorry if you did, but have there been any successful prosecutions? I mean, you talked about if you were able to collect the evidence. Have you been able to get a prosecution based on any of that?
Yeah, there actually have been several hundred prosecutions under the Hunting Act.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, most of the ones that the police have brought have actually been not against the organised fox hunts, but against a couple of working class guys with a couple of lurchers in the back of their Range Rover, and that's the ones the police get.
Right, okay.
Right, so there are a lot of those prosecutions. I mean, they have done some good stuff. Don't get me wrong here. This is thing that annoys me greatly when the organised hunts are getting away with it. They have the power to confiscate the dogs and crush the vehicles. That's within the Act.
Yeah.
They've done it when it's been a couple of working class boys
Right.
out there with lurchers chasing hares across the field, but they haven't yet done it to a fox hunt.
They haven't yet done it to an organised fox
They've
hunt.
only got to do it once.
Yeah, of course.
They've only got to take a pack of hounds off a hunt. The Crawley and Horsham, which is one of the closest ones to London, have now got 3 separate convictions for illegal hunting. So 2 of their masters were actually convicted for 2 offences within the same week,
Right.
one of which we were actually there. We actually got pepper sprayed by the police whilst we were trying to save the fox. And then they removed the man who was the huntsman, brought in another huntsman who was the brother of Mark Bycroft, who you actually saw on the video with Farage on Boxing Day. So his brother was brought there, CNH huntsman. Within 1 year, he'd been convicted. It cost the hunt a fortune, it nearly bankrupted them. They'd actually tried to get an injunction out to stop us from stabbing them, and they'd had to withdraw that injunction when it was just about to go to court because the evidence of their illegal hunting was overwhelming, and they knew they'd lose in court, so they spent £100,000 on legal fees trying to get this injunction against us, only to then have to withdraw, and then in the same year spent 10 grand on legal fees trying to defend the first 2